Okay. So tell me more about my great grandparents on the Italian side when you would visit them.
Yes, that was wonderful. It was truly wonderful. Now, when I was born, my parents were young people. My mother was 21, my dad was 25. And they used to like to go dancing and things like that. So when they did that, they would take me, and then when Jacqueline came along, Jacqueline was 2.5 years younger than me, Jacqueline too, they would take us up to my nanny's place up in Greensburg. And that was wonderful because we loved it up there. You'd go up to Nanny's, and at Nanny's place was Nanny, my grandmother, and Grumbo, my grandfather. I gave them their names, and after that, nobody called them anything except Nanny and Grumbo. Not even their own kids.
I think I have a picture of Grumbo on my Facebook, actually.
You may, yeah, you may.
Dad sent it.
Yeah, and but I'd go up there, and wonderful things would happen at that place. My grandparents were there, and then my Aunt Irene. My Aunt Irene was 1 year younger than my mother, and she was always in it. She was a very pretty lady, very pretty. Like to think she was prettier than my mother. Don't know if she was, but they were both pretty. But she was quite lovely. She looked a lot like Claudette Colbert. She had the high cheekbones and everything, and she was very funny, and I had a lot of fun with her. Now I'll tell you a little bit about her. They lived in front of Burnett's Tavern, and my aunt would take me over there, and she would buy me. I'd be a little kid, like 4 or 5 years old, 6 years old, no more than that.
Mm-hmm.
She'd take me over there, and she'd always buy me a glass of Tokay wine. I just loved that. Oh man, that was good stuff.
How old were you?
5, 6, something like that. She'd buy me a glass of Tokay wine. I loved it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and
Boy, that's Italian.
no, it's a Hungarian wine.
Oh no, I mean that's kind of an Italian thing to do.
Oh yeah, sure,
even the kids drink wine. Yeah.
Yeah, and actually, in recent years, I told my daughter Susie that, and I told her I'd never tasted Tokay wine since then. I knew it was a sweet wine, basically a dessert wine. Mm-hmm. Well, about sometime in the last late 8 months or so, she sent me a bottle of Tokay wine. Actually, we'll try some of that tonight. And I tried it, and I don't like it much anymore. But when I was a kid, I did. I thought that it's in the refrigerator. Yeah. Somewhere in the back there's a bottle of Tokay wine. Yeah, we'll try it. Now, of course, my tastes have changed, and as much as I liked Tokay wine when I was a kid, it's not. Yeah, this is Tokay wine. It's a Hungarian wine. It's quite sweet, and it's drinkable, but it's not great. But back then, I thought it was wonderful. But anyhow. I had my Uncle Jack there. Now my uncle Jack was he was born in 1918, so he was 14 when I was born, and my Uncle Angelo was almost 10. He was 9 and a half when I was born, and they lived there, and they all lived in that house, and I'd go there, and in the evening, all my grandfather's Italian friends would come over, and they'd sit around. They had a round table. And they would sit around this table, and they would be drinking beer and wine and arguing, and I always enjoyed that. And then my grandfather would say, "Annie, sing, Annie," and my grandmother would say, "Oh, you crazy old man." But then she would stand up and she would sing, and she had a beautiful soprano voice. And she would sing things like "Come Back to Sorrento" or "Ave Maria." She had a beautiful voice. And then both of my uncles played the piano. Now they were self-taught, but the two of them played different style. My Uncle Jack played barroom style.
Oh, okay.
And my Uncle Angelo played sort of a straight style. But then I would go and get my grandfather's hat and his cane. Now my grandfather walked with a cane because he had been in a couple cave-ins in the mines, and he had his legs broken. So he walked with a cane. But I would get his cane and I would get his hat, and then I would go in the living room, and one of my uncles would sit down at the piano and play "Keep Your Sunny Side Up." And I would be wearing the hat and I have the cane, and I would sing, "Keep your sunny side up, up, hide the side that gets blue. Do if you have 9 suns in a row. Baseball teams make money, you know. Keep that funny side up, up. Let that laughter come through. Do stand up on your legs. Be like 2 fried eggs. Keep your sunny side up." And at that point, I would throw on the hat and the cane, and I would dance. Lots of fun, lots of fun. And then at night, my grandmother would take us up to her bed, which probably drove my grandfather crazy because now he's got 2 little kids in the bed. And I thought it was old people, you see. Actually, my grandmother was only 50 when I was born. My grandfather would have been like 53. I thought it was old people who probably never had sex. Well, I'm sure now being an old man myself, I know they were. But my grandmother would tell us stories, and she would tell us the stories in Italian. At the time, I knew Italian. I don't know Italian anymore, but because I spent all that time up there, I knew the Italian. My grandmother was the best storyteller in the world, and she had all these stories, and in almost all the stories, it was the younger son who was the hero. I don't know. I guess that's an Italian tradition. I don't know, but I loved. Mm-hmm. We always made her tell us all those stories. That was wonderful. Okay, then another thing I did. I told you previously about my grandfather being the Italian cavalryman, how much he loved it. Well, I would get down in the basement with my grandfather when he would be fixing the furnace, and he would make me these wooden swords. And while he was fixing the furnace, I would run around the basement playing Italian cavalryman. And then I would say to him, "Grumbo, Grumbo, I killed 8 Ethiopians." And he'd say, "Good." He said, "Good." He said, "Viva il Duce!" And I would say, "Viva il Duce!" And I'm glad NSA doesn't know that. But it was a lot of fun there. It was always fun. My Aunt Irene was a funny lady. She really was. And I remember when we'd go somewhere with her, and my mother and my Aunt Irene would see some funny looking guy, and she'd say to my mother, "You take the man, I'll take the hat." She and my mom were both very pretty ladies. And when my mother was 16, she was selected at Oakwood Park. This is a small time thing, but she was selected at Oakwood Park as Miss Italy for 1927, I guess it was. And that made my Aunt Irene jealous. So my Aunt Irene entered the contest the next year, and then my Aunt Irene was Miss Italy for 1928. Well, they were both pretty girls. But it was always wonderful to go to my nanny's house. I always loved her. My nanny was the best cook in the world. And I'd go and she'd make me gnocchis and all the. And even though they were poor, they always had all this good food around the house. So as a little kid, I had all these prosciutto and pepperoni and all this Italian food that she would make for us.
Oh, wow.
And, yeah, and she was. I think I told her she was a little woman. She was 4'11", and well, she was getting pretty old then, but she'd always been a very pretty woman. And she was, even though she didn't say very much, she was always like the center of the family. Anyway, everything kind of revolved about Nunny, and Grumbo, so the day he died, always thought that his wife was the most beautiful girl in the world. He really did love her. and so they were terrific grandparents.